What's going on?
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing. Got a taste for blood and my tongue keeps bleeding. From the words I spit, so sharp, so freezing, so cold. Behold, frostbite they feeling. I could tear you apart or I could go heal them. Don't believe in fate, don't believe in ceilings. I just need a taste and my mind starts feeling. I don't pace myself, I grind on kneeling. Got lust for change, I just love the feeling. I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. And I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. Cause I'ma live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have a vision. I go by at night, I be in my feelings. I'ma be fine, need time, and I'll still be winning. I live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have a vision. I go by at night, I be in my feelings. I'ma be fine, need time, and I'll still be winning. I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon.
For those of you who are diehards who join us regularly, know that when we have guests on, then we add them to the intro. And we had Bill Bean last weekend, and I haven't got a chance to add him to that list. I'll do that next week. And I'll get to the story why here in just a few minutes. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Dead Air Live on the Dead Air Full Spectrum channel. Here we are on our Sunday night show, and we are so thrilled and happy to have all of you guys joining us, whether it is right here on YouTube or on any of the other media outlets we are connected with. So we're going to have a great time tonight with incredible guests and topics in and around the paranormal. So buckle in, and thank you guys for joining us. Ken, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. As you know, I played hooky last weekend with a vacation trip, surprise birthday type thing to Florida, to Orlando, to St. Augustine, and after 17 years, returned to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal. Well, it is Hollywood, absolutely. Fantastic. If you have not been, make it a point at some time in the future, go down there and see what they have. It's a little pricey, not going to lie, as you'd expect, but I'm going to tell you, they pull out all the stops, and Universal Studios does just an incredible job. This year, the big haunted house, I guess, was Ghostbusters Afterlife, which was our first stop. And wow, just wow.
For a second there, I thought I was listening to Christopher Walken. That was, wow, that was good.
George, boys, but it was phenomenal. Now I can't get it out of my head. Awesome trip. Nice. Rained a lot down there, but ran into some cool people. Ran into one of the guys from Ghost Augustine in his shop down there, and had a nice invitation back for some fun at some of their places. So we'll see if that is in the future at some point. We don't want to pass that up. It was kind of surprising to see him in the store, and it was like, oh my God, it's like I can play big shot. I know somebody down here, 1,500 miles from home. you know. But we had a great time. Thank you very much. Got to do little investigating, little bit, not a lot. Basically at the places, we stayed at 3 different places, so we were pretty active, bouncing all over the place. But that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So it's good to be back with everybody tonight.
Yeah, it's one heck of an opportunity to really celebrate your birthday in the extreme paranormal way, going to Halloween Horror Nights. And did you get scared at all, Ken?
What, in the haunted houses?
Yeah.
No, not really. I mean, you pretty much know what's coming. I was just amazed at, the actors down there, the way they dressed, and they did such a great job. I mean, it's always, let's face it, I worked at haunted places before, and it's always great when you can drop the biggest guy to the floor.
Yeah.
By scaring him. Okay. But there were a couple of times we just sort of, Julie DeMay, a little skittish. So we just stopped and let her go on about 30 or 40 feet in front of us without her knowing. And
cruel.
Well, that's, it's always a good time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, again, don't forget that, we do what we do, and jump scares can happen even actually in the true paranormal field. And that's what they capitalize on. I did Halloween Horror Nights this year too on YouTube. I just watched everybody go through there, and so yeah, but pretty amazing performances there. We are simulcast with KGRADB.com, KGRA on Facebook. You can also find us on Twitter at Global Radio Live. Of course, here on YouTube, if you're watching with KGRA, you can check us out and see us at Dead Air Nation. Our Facebook is Dead Air Full Spectrum. Our own personal Twitter is again, and I want to talk about that, King, because I know you brought something up, or Instagram, Dead_Spectrum for Twitter. And last but not least, but never least, is our Patreon accounts, guys. And again, we always invite you guys to come join us from our town hall meetings on Monday, which are a lot of fun. Everybody on screen together, just talking about the paranormal and our lives. And it's $3 to join this. I mean, you can't find a better deal for all the entertainment you could find on our account. So make sure you guys do check it out. There's a couple of freebies that are on there. So go there and check it out. Again, patreon.com/Dead Air Paranormal. Finally, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also, the thumbs up and the reminder bell, which is important. So you guys get notifications when we have upcoming categories and topics. And, we have some stuff that we can present to you right after the break. You might notice me a little bit slower in the way I'm approaching things tonight. From the last time we talked last Sunday, my 90-year-old father, whom I take care of full time, fell and broke his tibia, the lower leg just below the knee. And that was on Thursday. So we had to take him to the ER, and then, of course, the hospital does their thing where they've got to stabilize him. He fell and he broke a leg, which a lot of people do, but at 90 years old, it can be there can be additive to that. And it was about bringing down potassium levels, if anybody knows the medical field, making sure his blood pressure was okay, his blood sugar was okay. And it took a couple of days to get him stable to that. Not only that, but then the weekend creeped up. So the orthopedic surgeon scheduled him for surgery this morning, and he came out of that like a football player in high school. He just killed it. No pun intended. Pop.
I thought when you told me that earlier, I thought you had mentioned previously he was going to have the surgery done Monday. So the fact that you said they did it this morning on a Sunday, that's great.
Yeah. Well, it's a phone call after the show for you and I to have, Ken. But basically, it was supposed to be 6:30 the night of the fall. Then it was supposed to be noontime the next day, and then the other specialists wouldn't sign off because of certain levels not being where they were comfortable for surgery. The anesthesiologist was, so it just kind of cascaded from there. But I won't bore you with all the details. But
That's
to
all right.
say,
Everybody joins in me best pop for a speedy recovery, man. He's tough son of a bitch.
He is incredibly and in such good spirits all the way through, especially the chance to flirt with all the nurses. He loves that stuff.
Ooh, yeah.
So, thank you guys again. No thoughts and prayers were needed for this. This was just, him being just such a good person and a good patient. So we appreciate that. But that's the reason why I'm so exhausted, because I keep a vigilant eye on everything going on with him. So it's been 8 a.m. getting in there, besides getting up in the morning, eating, walking the dog, and then shooting over to the hospital, and then getting back at the end of visiting hours at 8 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. So tonight I escaped out of there early enough because he's comfortable and the surgery is over. But I may be somewhat stupid tonight in the way that I ask questions or do the interview. So apologies in advance.
Totally understandable. Understandable. But your dad's also a player too. Got those nurses around him all the time.
He flashes that smile, and they are all giggling. It's quite intimidating being in the same room with him. So, but anyway, let's not wait any further, because we're going to delve down a rabbit hole tonight that we have been anxious for quite some time. That this is something that may be in the category of groundbreaking, and if things go the way that we hope that they go, we will no longer need to go to haunted houses. We can do this right in our backyard. Anyway, Ken, would you do the honors?
I will. The boys are back tonight. A little note on this. In the roots of paranormal research, it was affirmed that electronics could and would play a vital role in extraordinary communication. When white noise was used as audio support to record voices seemingly out of thin air, to practice inevitably to become known as EVP, or electronic voice phenomena. It would be the introduction of a vacant barren radio frequency in the AM band used as a source of white noise that led to the astounding form of spirit communication known as DRV. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's direct radio voice. But today, the work of Ron Yacovetti, Lourdes Gonzalez, Tony Rathman, and Cherie Rathman has not only brought back the method of DRV, they've evolved it into what is arguably the closest thing to Thomas Edison's theoretical phone to the dead. And we are very much looking forward to discussing this tonight, because what they've been doing has kind of been a 3-year, maybe 3.5-year pursuit of making this a little bit better in terms of ITC communication. So let's talk about it. Without further delay, let's welcome Ron Yacovetti to the show, and Tony the Rathman.
Oh, I like that.
I had to give you a nickname, Tony.
I've been called that before, so it works. Yeah, it works great.
That's sticking. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome. God, you're
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us, and for the kind introduction. And happy birthday to Ken and George. All the best towards your dad as well. Sorry to hear that had happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry to hear that, but sounds like a strong man. I'm sure he will bounce back quicker than an eye blink, and he'll be in our thoughts and prayers to have that happen.
Thank you. It's getting comedic in the ways that these things happen. His last fall a year ago was in a doctor's office. This year, it was while he was exercising. So it's at least something that he's active at the time, and he'll bounce back. He will absolutely bounce back from this as well. So, but thank you everybody for your thoughts and kind words. I really do appreciate that. So, all right. So, have you reached God yet,
I don't think we're allowed. I'm not tall enough. Does that help?
He's around. He's around.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Take us back to the origins, gentlemen, how this all came about from the beginning 3.5 years ago, and how this collaborative effort kind of led you guys down this road.
All right.
All right. That gentleman right there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how you brought back DRV, Ron.
Yeah. So for Lourdes and I, we brought back direct radio voice in 2019. So it's been more than 3 years for us. We did it for two reasons. One, when I first saw Dr. Annabelle Cardoso's work, and she's who mentored me into it, she sat with the pioneers of vocal phenomena research. And I'm not talking the TV pioneers, the people who actually pioneered electronic voice phenomena research. Radove Friedrich Jurgensen, the father of direct radio voice, Marcello Bacci, who made it most famous in Grosseto, Italy, the gentleman who came up with the term ITC or TCI, Transcommunication Instrumental, which is Dr. Ernst Zinkowski, physicist, for people looking for the scientists involved in this stuff. She sat with all those people. And when I saw what they were getting, especially Bacci, with a vacuum tube radio, no spring reverb, no plasma discs, no sweep, I couldn't believe it. I went, how is nobody doing this? So I looked at Lourdes and go, we're going to listen to static. And that's how you know somebody loves you, when they go, okay, we're going to listen to static together. And we did. It was also born out of, and I'm completely honest about this, an inadequacy of my own. I don't build. Tony built a car recently, I think. I can't do that. If I was soldering, I'd high five you with fewer fingers. So I don't. But I was fascinated by what they were able to get with real time. So we brought it back, and we did everything from just the vacant AM station on shortwave or longwave, heterodyning frequencies, mixing boards with tone generators, UHF, white noise. We tried a variety of things to see what it would yield. And it all did yield voices. Flash forward, and at some point right after this, I'm going to hand the torch to Tony. We were doing all of the things that were done in review with audio evidence. At home, we were doing it in the moment of contact. We were denoising it. We were amplifying it a little bit. And then we did what was a first in ITC history. We slowed down the flow of live white noise because we remembered, and this is why you have to have reverence and respect for those whose shoulders you stand on history-wise. The Chamonix Hotel, one of my favorite places. Kelly and Tracy, love them. The people who did this before us had gotten amazing results with direct radio voice. So we looked at that and we said, this needs to come back, and we started doing it. And then about 2.5 years ago, because we already had a very solid friendship and relationship with Tony and Cherie Rathman, because they are two of the finest people you can hope to meet in this field, and genuine in their pursuit of being researchers. Now, this is not a knock against people who sell devices, because it's a great market and there's very talented people doing it. Tony built them for 13 years and did not sell a one. That to me spoke volumes to the fact that he said he was all about the research. So we partnered with them willingly and luckily, as we see it. And then the advancements over the last couple of years that Ken kind of referred to, I think it would be foolish to not attribute to that partnership, because we did see the efficacy of the method increase notably over the last 2.5 years, for sure.
Excellent.
Well, like I said, Cherie and I jumped in 2.5, 3 years ago, something like that. But we were on a 4 haunted mansion 4-day tour. We were doing one a night with Ron and Lourdes, and they were running this method called direct radio voice. Now, I had heard of it, but I had never heard what it could produce. And Ron got a statement that night about somebody in the building with us that night, and they said, bring her, said her name, to the basement. I mean, this was a full sentence with clarity. And I'm thinking, Cherie and I built spirit boxes for 12 years. We got clarity to the words, but we couldn't get the length of sentences. No matter what we did, no matter what we tried, we could never extend that communication past a second or two. And Ron was getting voices that didn't seem to have a stopping point. So, of course, we turned around and said, can we join you? We'd like to join forces, put our knowledge of spirit boxes with what you've done and your knowledge to how you created or brought back, revived DRV, and let's see what we can do with this. And that's how the last 2.5, 3 years have gone to where we are now with what we call Staticom. And we call it Staticom because it literally uses pure broadband white noise, which is typically referred to as static, but the radio is gone. The radio's been removed. The radio was a source from any skeptic or even academic society that, hey, you're getting stray radio voices, which was totally possible if your source of the white noise is a radio. That's what it does. So one of the first things we wanted to accomplish was to remove that low-hanging fruit.
Right.
So now, in sort of like layman's terms, and if I'm wrong, I need you guys to like educate me. What it sounds like is that you're using white noise, but you're able to filter the white noise in real time. Layman's terms.
That's spot on.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's Ken. That's spot on. And what Tony mentioned was important because we're not in this to fool ourselves. We're certainly not looking for fame and fortune. I don't think that pot of gold is at the end of the rainbow. We were looking for results. We wanted to see if we could replicate or even upstage what was done before historically because it was amazing. So we looked at criticisms seriously. We took them seriously and they were valid. Tony nailed the first one. You're getting stray radio. Well, you're using a radio. He's correct. So you can't rule it out. So now we removed that. Thinking now that we got that off the table, resonance is the only key factor that voices could come in. There's no carrier wave or signal reception anymore. The only other thing, right. The only other thing that we had ever heard as a criticism of ITC with voices like this was that these are warbles and artifacts of sound because white noise is random and we can always discern patterns in randomness. So we said, all right, well, that's a fair criticism. Let's unpack that and see if we can't address it. So first of all, to say that we can discern patterns in randomness is not a statement of debunkery. That's an appeal to our intellect. That's how we communicate. We hear sounds, allophones, phonemes contextually in syntax in language that we recognize, and that's how we communicate. We don't ever hear the cat go meow, 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 and go, oh, he wants to get in the car and go get treats. So that's not a statement of debunkery to us. Discerning patterns is something that we do as intellectual sentient beings. The other part of it is, and this is important because I think the paranormal does this a lot, and I know that it happens in science, is we use the word random. Random is an empty drawer. It's what we say when at the time it is not possible or plausible to measure or calculate factors that are involved. White noise is not fundamentally random. There are electromagnetic fields, charged ion particles from the sun, deterministic speech, quantum fields. There's a variety of things that could be at play, but we can't calculate them at the moment. So white noise isn't random. What it is computationally irreducible. At the moment, we can't calculate it. Very much akin to the coin toss at the Super Bowl, right? They go, it's a random toss, heads or tails. It really isn't. You have trajectory of the coin toss, wind speed, barometric pressure, gravitational forces, angular momentum, but they're not going to have a team of scientists on the 50-yard line figuring that out. They're just going to go, it's a random toss. So we took randomness off the table, we took radio reception off the table, and we're left with what sounds like speech. And to us, that is very deterministic.
Now, when you say the randomness, is the white noise generated digitally in a random sequence?
The sequence isn't random because white noise has a spectral frequency of 1. Meaning that every sound at every level, at every frequency is at the same
amplitude,
frequency, and height. Otherwise, certain sounds within that frequency would be over the others. It is the fact that 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz are all being produced at the same level is what gives you that shushing sound because you can't hear any of the individual sounds.
Yeah,
so
well,
that's not random then.
Right. I think, first of all, in defining white noise to everybody, it really is, it's a noise that has all the frequencies across the audible spectrum
of human hearing, right?
Equally.
Correct.
Because if you get into it, there's brown noise, there's pink noise,
Which are just subsets of the broadband frequency, but correct.
Right. Some of them are lower level, and some of them are exponentially, decibly lower than. I think brown is lower than pink, and pink is low to begin with. So this is what we talk about when we say white noise. I think most people think of it as shh, just this, static playing in your ear, but it's a little more than just that kind of thing. So that's what we're discussing in terms of white noise.
Correct.
That's right.
Are you finding that the discovery of this was right in front of our eyes and we just didn't go down this road? We were too,
Yes.
I don't want to see the term lazy, but it's just for those who are out there and doing this type of work, find it more entertaining using a spirit box or any of these other devices that have come since then. Because they're going to get the radio frequencies coming across. They're certainly going to get words coming across. So from an entertainment factor, that works more than what you guys have discovered here. And this may actually be a game changer, correct?
Yes. It's the irony is that the original, I'll let Tony speak to it, the original idea of how the ghost box works, with spirits manipulating frequency, fragments of sound from this radio sweep, at breakneck speeds with zero latency in the process, that violates all kinds of laws of physics as we know it. It's just impossible. It's superluminal contact. So you can't say that this stuff is supernatural, paranormal, and science can't speak to it. And then your first witness that you call in to testify about what you're doing is science, by saying that fragments of sound are being reorganized at breakneck speed and have to be in a certain place at a certain time to form certain words at the moment you need them. It's absurd, but that's been the prototype all along. We think that the same way that what we do works, and this is where I want to hand it to Tony, is how the ghost box works, but the different lies in how the methodology works and inhibits itself.
Right.
Yeah, so like Ron was saying, the whole philosophy behind the spirit box was, like Ron said, was that they were taking the fragments of audio, because you're scanning anywhere up to 100 stations per millisecond on a up or down the dial. So you're getting those fragments of audio. And the theory behind it was that spirits are rearranging that audio. Like Ron said, we not only do not believe that to be true, we can prove they don't need an RF signal at all. In fact, we can prove that the RF signal is what is truncating the actual communication. When a signal gets hit, the communication from spirit drops without having the radio involved anymore. And we figured this out from a couple of tests. Ron and Lourdes did a test with all sorts of people having spirit boxes 30 feet below ground in a zinc mine. The DRV at that time was the only method to be able to still get communication. Then Cherie and I did a live performance, and I happened to have a sleep machine in my bag. The sleep machine had a white noise setting, and I thought, what the heck, I'm going to try this. So I did. Instead of the world band radio, I plugged in the sleep machine. The white noise came on. I asked my question. I got my answer. But not only did I get my answer, the answer was embedded onto a 3-second chip of white noise, because it was pre-recorded white noise. And the answer that I got would repeat every 3 seconds. So that sleep machine was now obsolete because it had a voice on it. But what we turned around and did then is I recorded running water, fans, air conditioners. I taped mics to my car when I drove around town to test it. Can I pull voices from other white noise? And sure enough, I could. The problem was that the white noise wasn't consistent in its levels. It didn't have a spectral frequency of 1 like a white noise generator did, which made it difficult to extract the voices.
Can I ask then, from the spirit box perspective, which you guys all know, I played around with that for so long, shack hack that I still have to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And on a lot of the different occasions that we were doing a sweep, and there was the same voice, identical voice, that went across multiple bands. So you're saying that there could be a spirit that's speaking through the white noise that's above the stations, Would
Correct.
that be a fair assessment?
Yes. Matter of fact, that was one of the things Lourdes identified, was that anytime a message would come through, it would come through above the frequencies of the radio stations or below it. It was never in the frequency of the radio station itself.
Yeah, that's true. And just to preface that statement, because often we lean on audio engineers because they can tell us how sound behaves and how to produce sound, characteristics of sound. But Lourdes is a licensed court reporter for the state of New York. So she listens to linguistics at different speeds, cadences, dialects over each other. She listens to recordings of testimony. So she does for the living what she does for the dead. And I will take the court reporter and the linguistic telling me that these are words over the audio engineer every single day. She hears stuff. I won't talk about her bad if she's in the house. She'll hear it. So she's that good. And so we looked at that, and she said that these voices are either lower than a sweep or they replace the sweep because they're louder. You don't hear the ch anymore. And that's when we realized this is stochastic resonance, which is when any one frequency enters white noise and matches one, they resonate, which gives them amplitude. Then our process in real time lops off the noise floor to the only thing that's left at the end is the voice that emerged through the resonance. This, we think, is how the ghost boxes also work. And there's a brevity to the messages because, like Tony said, if they're being availed, the white noise and the resonance is what makes them audible. Every time it hits a station, it's like if we were on the phone and I kept intermittently hitting the mute button. It cuts off the ability for the voice to resonate or come through. So we think that the boxes work, but we think that the methodology of the sweep is what inhibits the length of the messages.
Correct.
Well, the spirit box is almost an accident. It's a form of frustration. And what I mean by that is back in the day when radios weren't designed as well as they are now, and I remember this as a kid, you could literally dial in between stations.
Yes, yes.
And get the static because radios back then weren't designed to pick up one frequency or another.
Right.
As radios got better designed, like some of the forerunners of the spirit box could do that back in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s.
Right.
Turn it between two stations and just get that hiss.
Yeah.
But you couldn't do that anymore because radios will always go to left or right, whatever has the higher frequency. So now the only thing left to do was to scan channels.
Yeah. No, I love that you brought that up because Marcello Bacci, who made direct radio voice most famous, and I have never seen a ghost box do what he did with an old vacuum tube radio and a vacant channel. The reason that direct radio voice disappeared from the landscape, because this is probably, Tony and I are probably not on a popularity list for this opinion, but we don't think that the Franks box was an advancement in a progression, because the progression has a topological linear process where things keep building upon, it's a continuation. This does not have a topological history. What happened was it's kind of a derailment. It's kind of a derivation from what they were doing with direct radio voice, which predates it. So we think that the reason that it became what we call the Q-tip of the paranormal, right? Because you have that little thing you put in your ear, but Q-tip is a brand. It's actually a cotton swab, but the brand has made itself synonymous with the process or the item. So ITC has become branded to spirit boxes or ghost boxes because that's what's on TV. And in America, if it's not on TV, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The other important thing was
it's kind of the same motherboard with a different facing. This one's brown, this one's red, this one looks like a radio, and I'm not taking issue with any designer, but I'm just calling balls and strikes, you know?
Absolutely.
Go ahead,
Yeah, I can honestly say that I'm curious to see what you guys have brought to the show tonight. And I'm going to, because that's what we're supposed to do out there. That's how we contribute. I'm going to try to rip it apart because that helps us advance what it is that we're doing. And I know that, Ken, there was a couple of questions, and I know it's topic sensitive, and I don't know if we go too far, it's going to have the same relevance. Do you want to pop those up right now?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. One of them is from our friend Sandy Andrews, who wants to know, is it easier to hear words via the Staticom versus Spirit Box? Tony.
Without a doubt, Staticom does all the cleansing that you would normally do on an EVP, which a Spirit Box doesn't have. Spirit Box also uses other phonetic changing of the words, being reverb, echo. Staticom has none of that. The other advantage to Staticom is that it's filtered, it's denoised, it's slowed down so your human senses can pick it up all in real time. And there's no white noise sound left because we cut that off at the end, leaving only the voice. So not much different than we're speaking now is what Staticom sounds like.
Okay, very good. We had another from Mary Beth. This goes back to brown noise now. Mary Beth said something along the lines of she prefers to use brown noise. So her question is, brown noise is lower, deeper sounding. I'm not sure how to describe it. It's, if you guys want to jump in on that.
Brown noise is a subset, meaning certain frequencies within the full broadband white noise spectrum. Broadband white noise is every single sound the human ear can hear. Brown noise is a subset, like say, and I don't know if this is accurate, but say every 10 frequencies or every 100 frequencies scaling up or down. But it is a subset. So is pink, so is purple, so is brown. They're subsets of full broadband white noise. The reason we use full broadband is because people, when we started to realize this work, would come to us and say, okay, what frequency are they speaking at? They will change. It'll vary from one end to the other in a couple of sentences that they say. There is no set frequency, which is why we use every sound the human ear can hear.
Do you have a hypothesis as to why it's conducted that way?
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, I was answering a question with a question, and if you want to go first, Tony, by all means. I was going to say, conducted that way, meaning by design from the other side?
That is the question, I would imagine. If is it a random scenario? Is it an intentional scenario from the other side?
I think it's an unknown scenario. I think in philosophy or in trying to figure out any kind of a computation, it's what's called a hidden variable. We can assign something to fill the gap of what we think the hidden variable is, but we really have no way to know empirically what's happening. It's metaphorically, a lot of times we'll say it's very much like if you guys are football fans, I know. Your receiver's running downfield, and he looks back, and from over his shoulder to a certain point, he can see the ball coming, and then he receives it. What he's not privy to at the moment prior to contact is the launch, the trajectory, the speed, the spin. He doesn't see any of that. So there are elements to this prior to us receiving it that we don't know. We can never say for sure what frequency they're at because we only know through which we are able to hear it or detect it most sensibly with the settings or with the components that we're employing the use of. And ironic to me, too, that because we say that the spirit realm, people universally in the paranormal agree that the spirit realm is devoid of time space. These are man-made constructs, and they don't have to adhere to that. And then they want to know what frequency they're at. Well, what is frequency? Frequency denotes units of measure of time. So if they don't have frequency or time as we know it, how could you have an exact match or measure?
You can't
to tune into the frequency that they're at. You would have to know you would be, without being able to know it, it would be completely speculative guesswork to say that they have time space like we do and then apply the frequency per oscillations that we're applying and go, all right, they're at 40 hertz. That's where we receive it.
Because it's, all time is a human construct. So, when you start breaking down hertz into oscillations per minute or per second, again, that's time-based. But to answer your question, George, about it being intentional, the only part of what Ron said that I would completely disagree with is that the speech is intentional. For me to ask a question and then come back with an answer from a timing and relevance standpoint and show intelligence to the question I asked, that's intentional.
Yeah, no, let me just clarify too. I was not in any way indicating that the speech wasn't intentional. I, in fact, feel that is extremely deterministic. I was saying that the methodology or for which they tune out or tune in and transmit is an unknown variable to us that we can't ever understand.
Yeah,
the speech is completely deterministic.
Hey, guys, we don't want to have you fighting on the show, okay?
Oh, we're not fighting.
Let's make this amicable. Let's make this nice. Go ahead, Ken.
The only thing I would say is that whether it's incidental or accidental or purposeful, they're still using human limitations. And what I mean by that is, if anybody out there, very any linguists out there, there are a thing called phonemes.
Right.
And those are the sounds humans make. And I think it was humans can only make 26 sounds or something like that. We form words with lips, tongue, teeth,
right,
and so forth. So they are still bound in terms of language to exactly what their limitations were here as a living person. I assume that's the case unless they are projecting something and we are receiving that in a way that's familiar to us.
Go ahead, Tony. I'll go after you, or unless you want me to go.
Well, I'll just start it, and because you explain this much better, so I'm going to let you take this one. But those assumptions that you made is where you have to take a step back. And instead of trying to define what the paranormal is, you have to step back and try and define what you believe reality to be. And we had to do that. And so we adopted what was called analytic idealism, which says, and I'll make this really brief, Ron, because I know you're excellent at explaining this, but that there's one ontological primitive.
You have to tell George and I like we're 7 years old.
Okay, sorry.
They're asking for a friend. Go ahead.
Yeah.
There's one ontological primitive, meaning that there's one be all end all, and that's consciousness. It's there before, it's there during life, and it's there after life. And we believe it connects back to universal consciousness, where all information is stored. So when they're giving us information, let me pass it over to Ron and let him take it from here.
No, that was a great setup. So the first thing in the words we use to describe things matter, and a lot of times language compels us to use words for the purposes of discussing or addressing things, but sometimes it conflates the actual message of what we're trying to say. We dialogue to ourselves. We speak to ourselves in our heads more than we ever speak to people outside of ourselves. We do that without moving our lips. In language that they understand, we do that without our ears catching any sound waves.
Sometimes I do it moving my lips, Ron. I get the weirdest looks. But
you get a free seat on the subway that way.
Yeah.
So we know that this happens. What we believe, like Tony was speaking to, is, and this is something we thought was important, because everybody in the field gets this stuff isn't real. You don't believe this is real. Ghosts aren't real. And you do need to take a step back and what do you think that reality is? In order to declassify or say that something is or isn't real, you've got to have an idea what you think reality is. And that would employ a metaphysics, which we're all operating under, but most people don't think what exactly the one they're under is. All right. And metaphysics is not, the paranormal field will often make you think that this is something that means like spiritual woo-woo, ghosts just do stuff. No, it literally means that which stands behind the physics. And it is a different thing. Science is in the business of telling us what we're going to see next. It predicts and models behaviors of nature, of reality. It doesn't tell us what nature and reality are. That's a philosophical position, and that was Tony referred to perfectly as an ontology, the study of beingness, what it is to be something. So we think that reality is fundamentally consciousness, from which everything can emerge, but itself not reducible to anything else.
I'll tell you, Ron, you made a very eloquent statement right out of the gate when we brought you on tonight, which is physics as we know it, science as we know it. And it's an important distinction because that has changed over centuries. Each and every time there are things yet to be discovered. But in the meantime, we are accepting the value of what has been discovered. So
that is true. Yes, I agree. But science has never told us ontologically what reality or nature is. It always tells us what it's going to do. what to expect. And those laws, those consistencies in nature have allowed us to put somebody in space, to create cell phones.
Yes.
So those regularities are valuable. In the paranormal, if you have hypotheses and theory that clashes with known science, then you have bad hypotheses and theory. You shouldn't be clashing with those things. Analytic idealism allows us to explain what we do and what people do in the field without clashing with ratified laws of science, because it says that reality is fundamentally mental. Not my thoughts or yours, but thoughts, mental processes outside of us. This transpersonal world out there that we share is, in essence, mental. And it gets confused because most people operate under what's called physicalism or materialism. They think that there's a world out there and it's 3D and it has all its measurements and stuff. And then when we observe it and we measure it, it reveals those characteristics to us. Well, we know now for at least 40 years of quantum physics that measurement is what gives physicality physicality. Physicality is the result of measurement. Prior to that, it does not have physical parameters. It is established through measurement. And the idea that most people in the field would think is that you can explain all of reality or nature in a dichotomy that consists of two things: mind stuff and matter stuff. And those things are jointly efficient to explain all of reality. But it's not a true dichotomy, because they would have to exist at the same level of abstraction or at the same conceptual level, right? You would have to have the same. You'd have to be able to answer one question and tell you the state of both. As an example, if you wanted to test if somebody was living or dead, and you did, and then the results said that the person's alive, from that you would have the ontological state, the beingness of death and of life, from the one question. You can't do that with mind and matter, because matter is one more abstraction, one level up from mind, because in order to have matter, you have to perceive it. In order to perceive, you have to be conscious. So consciousness has primacy. It is the one thing that we have as the first. It's the foundation. Perception comes before measurement. It comes before anything else. As Tony called it, the ontological primitive.
Right. You know, the other thing, Ron, and not to keep going on, I know you guys have questions, I can tell, but Ron said we don't combat with science. Well, the good part of the theory and the philosophy that we laid out is we don't combat with religion now either, because there are no contradictions between either.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we want to do a couple of samples here in the first hour of what it is that the Staticom actually does? And by the way, even though it's a lie, I am going to claim credit for Tony doing the trigger words and again the redundant responses. I hope that those have both been utilized in this communication. You know, asking them to say a word, having them say it back, and then having to also repeat it to validate that it's actual intelligent communication. But what do you want to throw out there, Ken? You got certain ones listed?
I could we could do a couple of those, because I certainly want to open discussion to those. One question before we do, or maybe a statement, is that the greatest jump in science in humanity was probably from the 1800s to the 1940s. Since that point, we have a tendency to ask why, whereas back then they would say, why not?
Right.
So I'm not saying we're crawling at a snail's pace, but it certainly has leveled off in terms of what the scientific community has dug in to say, this is our reality, because, maybe not willing to entertain extreme possibilities like they did back then. I mean, we wouldn't have polio vaccines or anything like that if someone somewhere along the line said, why not?
Right. And the scientific community mocked Newton for what, 14 years or more. And now all of a sudden gravity is a thing, right? Is all of a sudden now it's a remarkable discovery and landmark in science, until Einstein supplanted that idea, and then the same effect that you see that they call gravity, he calls the bending of space-time.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have space-time explaining the same phenomena. So science always will vilify, push back, and then eventually maybe work work through stuff. But still, in every instance of those things, they're not telling you what reality is. Even with quantum fields and quantum mechanics, right? Particles are not things with standalone existence and little discrete boundaries that exist outside of consciousness. There are behaviors of the field of subjectivity in the same way that a lake is a big body of water, and a lake can have ripples, right? And like a particle, ripples can have height, angular momentum, speed, width, flow. I could have a variety of things you can measure about the ripple, but you can't take the ripple off of the lake. There's nothing to the ripple but the lake. So the particle and all those things that they even measure in science are part of the field, which is a theoretical model used for predicting and anticipating what nature will do, but they're not standalone things with discrete boundaries that exist outside of consciousness.
Right.
There you go. Follow along at home. I know that some of the comments, it's fascinating, different way of looking at things. And this is why you guys are, in our opinion, some of the best people to have on, because you're willing to ask those questions. And before you come to a conclusion, and I'm not saying that you guys are saying, oh, we got it all figured out, because there's much work to do. But in being willing to ask the questions, and this is why I go back to, you guys are asking, why not? Why can't we do this? Why? Well, okay, so we fail miserably or whatever it is, but we'll never know unless we go out there and start pressing some buttons. I do want to play maybe one or two of these clips that Ron was kind enough to send along to me today. There are, I believe, 6 in total. So I definitely want to save some of those for the second half. But I think I'll do something different, is that I'm not going to ask you to set up the clip. Let's go backwards. Let's play the clip, and then you can provide the context to it afterwards. Mm-hmm. And if we need to, I'll replay it, because some of these aren't very long. This is the longest one. It's about a minute. So let's get to that. The first one is Damnation Dark Vocals Direct Radio Voice. All right, so let's show you this one, and then the guys will tell you a little bit about it.
Why are you so angry?
Not fair, I heard.
You know what we're doing. What is an easier
Hey, I'm going to throw up a jump ball here. Guys, tell us a little bit about the situation, and the people in chat, if you have questions, I'm going to let you take this over for a little while. So where are we, and who is the guy who seems like he is really having a bad day?
He is. This is at the Shanley Hotel in Napanoch, New York. Yep.
Yeah.
And that was with still using the radio for the white noise source at the time. You could hear people talking in the background. There you go, the Haunted Shanley. We have had some of our best stuff happen at that location, which we very much love. The Shanley's great. Mm-hmm. Do go if you can. So that's when it was recorded. It was one voice for about a minute. I've never seen a ghost box do that. When I was reviewing it, I was laughing like a school kid. And Lourdes goes, "What's so funny?" I went, "The dude's still talking." I couldn't believe it. It kept going on and on and on. It's not edited together. So that was something that for me, I'd never seen a box do. I never heard a file from a ghost box that long.
Yeah, in going there myself, I have an idea that is probably one of two spirits that are there. You guys know who they are, and the people at Shanley know who they are. But yeah, we interacted as well. So When you said Shanley, makes sense.
Yeah, it very well could be. So yeah, that's where it's from. And I also wanted to say thank you for what you said before we went to the clip, because Tony and I do take pride in the fact that we don't claim to know or have everything figured out. What we try to do is we try not to ignore the things that science knows or tells us. We try not to be ignorant to the metaphysics or what's behind the physics of where reality may be, which is why we took on the philosophy. And we tried not to do what happens so much in the field, which is spiritually bypassing, which is just saying that ghosts just know how to do this. There's a portal under the stairs. Don't put the two mirrors together because it's a portal. Those are all completely speculative. They're empirically inadequate. There's nothing to believe that except that these are axioms that have been passed down like traditions in the paranormal. There's no data to support these things. So I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying that there's no reason for us to take them seriously until there is something to support them. So we don't claim to know everything. We just try to be skeptically parsimonious with what we do and how we try to explain it. We could certainly be completely wrong, but we're trying not to invent things just for the purposes of sticking to a narrative.
Right.
Okay, we'll let Tony wrap this up. George, we got time or we're up against it now?
60 seconds, brother. 60 seconds.
Okay, so what was impressive was the word infuriated. Completely pronounced 4 syllables. It took 3 seconds to get that out. If you're scanning radio frequencies, you're talking about 1/10 of a second toggling. So that's impressive. Tony, why don't you take us to break?
Are you talking to me, Tony?
Oh, yeah, you, Tony.
Oh, well, that's not my clip, so that's Ron. So,
Oh, okay. I mean, I thought maybe you had wanted to weigh in on it before we say.
the impressive part of I can do that. The impressive part about that clip is, like we were talking about, the length, the fact that the voice did not change structure, vocal dimensions, diphthongs, vowels, consonants. It was constant through the whole thing. Spirit box, I've never seen do that. Like I said, we've built them for years. There's a brevity to a spirit box. Even to get a full sentence doesn't happen very often. This, and like Ron said, this was still direct radio voice, but it still worked. It was the next step, which we're going to go into, about removing the radio to get rid of that low-hanging fruit. That's where the next part of this discussion is going to go.
And I want to see some more of these examples here, and I'm just again astounded by the continuity of it. But we have to go to break here, guys. We'll be back just on the other side with a very special guest tonight, Tony Rathman and Ron Yacovetti. Stay with us. You're watching Dead or Alive on the Dead or Full Spectrum channel. We'll be right back.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
As UFO reports come in from around the world, the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, is there. We continue to explore new cases and build our massive database. We share our information with the world in a number of ways. If you would like to be part of our investigative team, you are always welcome. What could be more exciting than exploring the UFO question firsthand? Join MUFON, find your friends.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
And agreed. Thank you once again to all of our Patreon members who join us each and every week for our town hall on Monday nights at 8 p.m. We'll see you guys in there tomorrow. And again, so much more content available for you guys. $3 a month membership. And you get an introduction to some tutorials. You get introductions to some of the bloopers that we have, some of the investigative evidence, the clips that we've had, some reaction videos. The sky's the limit, guys, and only more to come. And speaking of which, we have more to come with our channel. What's going on now? What's going on in the future? Ken's going to talk about that for us right now.
Yeah, really quickly. And I hope last night everyone, all our Patreons, saw my little mini Lizzie Borden documentary, our evidential thing last night. It was a lot of fun. But this week, coming up Thursday, will be, well, that was weird, with Carrie Hopper and Erin Bush. And I'm told they have a special guest or two this week, but we'll see. That's up to Carrie. And of course, the latest Extremely Strange is up for your viewing. That's supposed to be me right there, thinking about a Pukwudgie, long story there. But it's about a family that was haunted in Rancho Cucamonga, California, that drew the attention of people like Barry Taff and Ed and Lorraine Warren. And then next Sunday, he's back, George. Robert the Doll will be joining us from East Martello Museum again
in Key West.
So make sure you ask Robert's permission to ask questions, and there will be no photography without the express written consent of RT Doll.
Yes. David Sloan, his handler, will be joining us also. So make sure you guys hit that reminder bell so that you don't miss that incredible show. Guests on Thursday. So are we saying Aaron and Carrie are stealing some more of our guests? Is that what's happening?
I don't know. It's just I'm getting an impression.
They keep stealing.
I'm getting a vision through my third eye here that somebody may be joining them.
We better tell Tony and Ron to expect the email from them. You know how they do this stuff. Hey, just real quick, too. I finally saw The Deliverance on Netflix of the Demon House. And I'll tell you something. I was scared. And it wasn't the fact that it was the story that scared me, or certainly not the special effects. It could have been seen and done with the effects from, the time of The Exorcist. There wasn't anything that was really incredible there. But the acting, I mean, freaking Glenn Close was in this movie.
Oh, okay.
I'm sitting there going, is that? And I waited until the end to read the credits, and it was absolutely well done, well performed. So if you get a chance, guys, to check it out. I don't know whether or not it was smart or stupid to call it The Deliverance, when you're talking about countering against the movie starring Burt Reynolds and Ned Beatty and John Voight, but it's I said they're going to get the attention. That's for damn sure. So make sure you guys do check it out if you have Netflix. But enough of that. Let's get back to our guest tonight, Tony Rathman, and we've got Ron Yacovetti joining us once again. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
So, topically, that first one that we just played before the break, I want to go down that rabbit hole with you, gentlemen, and ask those questions of what is the difference. I want to ask Tony specifically, when you use a digital audio recorder, when you're using a spirit box, you go back for review, and then as you play, you're putting up the words of what you're hearing that they are saying. Is the clarity better here? Yes. I'm not even going to dispute that. But secondly, is what gives you the idea that it is not, as somebody was saying, not some type of other interception that you're picking up on? In other words, when does the intelligent interaction happen?
Well, first of all, Staticom is a closed circuit system, meaning that there is no availability for any external signal, whether that be satellite, TV, radio, ham radio, baby monitor, nothing. It does not have the technology in it to receive communication from some external signal.
So it's not like when we were younger and we had the corded phones and you could pick up your neighbor. That's not a possibility. Okay.
Not a possibility unless you know of circuitry within a white noise generator that has the ability to do that. I do not.
Okay.
So no, not a possibility. The second, sorry, Ron, go ahead.
No, I was just commending what you said because it was perfectly said. Go to the second.
I don't remember what the second was. Can you repeat what the second part was, George?
Well, is it the responses back and forth? When does it denote that intelligent response? In other words, that, you know, when people are doing an EVP session and you're asking a question and you're hearing "get out" or "up the stairs" and it has no relevance to the questions you're asking. Okay. Does that come about throughout this session also?
Typically, no. The answers that we get, whether it's even from the main voice that's responding to the question that we answered, or even the conversations that we're hearing that are happening in the background, they all seem to be either talking about the question we asked before the answer comes. I mean, we've heard them argue amongst themselves before the answer comes through, but then the answer comes through, and of course, the way we justify whether that answer is a legitimate response is timing and relevance. How fast did it come in? And the relevance of it, was it relevant to the question we asked?
Okay. Separate and unequal for that, before we start getting into more of these clips, which I'm anxious to show everyone. Mm-hmm. Let's take a step back at the typical spirit box session, where someone has headphones, or even the SD's method. You know, it's essentially variation of a theme. So my question is, when you look into white noise and its effect on the paranormal or spirit communication, you've got to weed through a bunch of sites that will talk about audio pareidolia. Okay, before you even get to someone who discusses the other possibility.
Right.
So when you're talking about that, a couple of questions on that, because we've all heard or seen people put the headphones on, and it's extremely difficult. Some people will sit there and click it out, and other people just, maybe it's their first time doing it. They don't know what they're listening to, and they'll sit there for 10 minutes with absolutely nothing coming through, they say, and then they'll take them off and say, I really couldn't make out anything. Mm-hmm. Or, on the other hand, a lot of people will be really uncomfortable, almost to the point of having an episode with this pumping, this white noise or the scanning of frequencies pumping into their brain. So my question is, when you are listening to white noise, what is the effect that it has on us? Let alone, you know, can spirits manipulate it, whatever the theories are. What effect does it have on us? as far as audio pareidolia, as far as just scrambling things up here a little bit, listening to the pulsations.
Well, I know that both Ron and I have responses to this, and I have a very good idea of where Ron's going to go. But I just want to say a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is anyone who hears voices in a fan or an air conditioner went on. The medical community will tell you today that they are suffering from musical ear syndrome or schizophrenia. We do not believe that to be true. If we can pull voices from white noise, running water, fans, air conditioner, and now a white noise generator with clarity, and you can get an understanding from a group of people, because we do live, what we call the digital seance initiative. So we do it in front of live groups of people. When everyone's heard the same thing, that whole idea that you're getting misrepresentation of what you heard goes out the window. And I'll pass it to Ron at that point.
Perfect. No, I love how you explain that. So yeah, pareidolia is a sore spot for me for a couple of reasons. First of all, I know that they had done tests, blind and double-blind tests. Right, that's Lourdes is right. They white noise calms or puts them in trance state. Right, and that's so. I'll address that in a moment. They've done tests, blind, double-blind tests, and the results were astronomically against the efficacy of spirit box communication, because people, like, I don't know, it was like 68, 70%, whatever, heard different words. So in addressing this with our linguist, with Lourdes, who just chimed in there, she makes a point to say that if you say the word rip and she hears trip, is human hearing fallible? Yes. Do words rhyme? Yes. Does that mean that you misheard the word, that therefore what was heard was not speech? No, it does not. It does not imply that whatsoever. Again, it's like a bug here. It doesn't imply that at all. Is it possible for pareidolia to happen? Yes. My problem with pareidolia is it gets thrown around the same way WebMD uses headache. It's a symptom of everything. The problem also to me is that at the rate of audio capture throughout the paranormal community, where the characteristics of the data is pretty much synonymous no matter who, where, or when, we're told that it's not really what we think it is. It's not communication. Like you said, you have to weed through all the stuff that says that it's pareidolia and it's fallible human hearing. It's hearing what you want to hear. Where's the data that shows where pareidolia rears its head in day-to-day life? Because surely nobody could be suggesting the absurdity that would say that pareidolia is predatory only to the paranormal. Like when I go through day-to-day life, everything works just fine. As soon as the spooky stuff comes on, holy shit, my hearing is out the window. I can't hear stuff anymore. Where's the guy who goes to his supervisor's office and they go, "You're fired"? He goes, "Fire? A raise? That's fantastic." "Oh, I'm sorry, pareidolia, my prescription ran out." We don't ever see that data. You have to show the fallibility of pareidolia happening in other elements of life, not just in the paranormal.
Okay, so every time we look at a cloud and say it looks like a duck, that's pareidolia.
That is a form of visual pareidolia. That's correct. But if you're seeing ducks in clouds all the time, then you would have to start questioning why that's happening.
So the other end, it's what you're suggesting, Ron, is pareidolia is not a thing. I would argue that it most certainly is.
No, I agree.
It is, Tony. Pareidolia
it is a thing.
Nothing else. An early warning system that's ingrained in us from the time of early man to spot potential danger, to see faces in shadows. That comes from our
pattern
DNA.
Correct.
To be able to spot potential dangers and whatever's stored in our memory banks. I mean, people will see a shadow and their mind will add arms and legs to it based on our knowledge of our reality. So I would just say that pareidolia is alive and well. No?
Yeah. I'm not disagreeing with that at all, Ken. What I'm disagreeing about, not that it's not a real thing. The human mind is made to pattern recognition and create something out of nothing. That is how visual perception works. That is how auditory perception works. But to Ron's point, if I'm not suffering from pareidolia side effects when I'm communicating. Could I hear something wrong? Yes. But it only becomes the main dismissal standpoint when we're talking about voices from where we don't understand they're coming from. And it gets escalated 100 times worse, which was one of the main reasons with Staticom, was to get the clarity in the speech where that misunderstanding of what was said goes away.
Right. And that was what I was saying too. I never said that it was not.
Right.
In fact, I began the statement saying that pareidolia does exist. I know it does happen, but at the rate that audio is captured in the paranormal field, if that were all to be dismissed under the umbrella of pareidolia, then you would have to have examples of life where people were having instances where pareidolia plagued them. It can't just be predatory to listening to spooky stuff. That was my point.
Yeah.
And that data is missing.
But I think that, like anything else, it crosses over into every facet of life.
Sure.
Whether it's bowling, ghost hunting, or
are you kidding? At my age, at my age, I watched every show with captions because half the time I can't understand what's being said.
Me neither.
So it makes it a lot easier.
Full disclosure.
I think we're concentrating right now at this point on the peas and not the steak. And the steak for us here in the paranormal is the communication part of it. And again, what can eliminate that pareidolia, in my amateur naive thinking with regards to this, is the things that I talked about before, such as repetitive response and or trigger words. If you're putting words out there that ask them to communicate back with you that are going to be multiple syllables, it's going to be something not commonly heard, such as infuriating. This is where we can establish more so that there is contact being made and not something that we're just imagining with our ears and with our mind.
Right.
And
Now,
a goal to get towards.
I agree and admire the fact that you made that delineation, but that also puts an emphasis, I think, on the fact that the determination of whether or not something is pareidolia and what it constitutes is being arbitrarily decided, but again, through a human construct, because there's no clinical statement that says that pareidolia has to be within a certain amount of syllables to happen, right? It could happen on a multisyllabic word, or it could happen on something that's more, yes, no, Steve, a one-word name.
No, listen, right? All right, right now, I'll give you an experiment. Ron, say the word infuriated.
Infuriated.
Okay. All of our listeners also heard that.
Correct.
It's not conceptual. It's not perspective. It's a fact of the matter. So if you, again, laying out a format for that communication, and that communication is responding in kind on there, you've recorded it, as Tony has just played some of those clips, and it's able to be, at that point in time, determined by other ears, other people's minds, what it is that they're hearing. It's just when it's either a whisper, a class B, a class C that's coming across, that makes it more difficult. Look, I can absolutely relate with Lourdes, because back when I was in the Air Force, I was a Russian linguist, and we had to listen with headphones bigger than these to Russian pilots flying in Czechoslovakia, flying in Eastern Germany at the time. And from the time that they're on the ground taking off, so you heard whisper sounds there in a different language phonetically. So you have to develop and train your ear to be able to understand what it is that they're saying. What you gentlemen have been working on, your research, is listening for all of this. So I put a deep investment in your guys' capability for what it is that you're picking up. I put a deep investment in Tony Rathman putting the text on the screen of what it is that he picked up there, because I could trust in that more than 6, 10, 12 people arbitrarily coming and listening to it the first time, and all, again, coming up with a different idea of what it is they're hearing. You build up a trained ear doing this. Application is, over time, mastered, I think, as far as that's concerned. And that's why you guys are working this to a development level where others can start to get to the same level that you are with a trained ear. I'm hoping that is the ultimate goal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with that at all. But we've had people come in here for the very first time when we do TDSI. Those people have never heard it before. and we'll have 29 to 30 people go, that's exactly what I heard. Because there are no words when we do TDSI, only sound.
Good. All right,
Okay.
Ken, we want to go another example?
Absolutely. The next one here is just entitled Energy of Your Mind. So let's get this up there and you guys can talk a little bit about it on the backside.
How do you hear me speak?
Okay, real quick.
All right, so this was a simple question. When I speak, I create vocal sound waves which travel through the atmosphere. In order for another human to hear it, they have to have ears, they have to have follicles. Those follicles have to vibrate. That vibration gets sent to the brain. The brain interprets it as pattern recognition of speech, and then that person can answer back. But if spirit is just energy, and they have no human ears, and I'm creating vocal sound waves, I wanted to know, how do you hear me speak? And that was their answer. They said we call it death, which is really, to me, just an explanation of saying we've passed over, but energy of the mind, that's the thing. Now, that's a very interesting answer because for 12 years before this, I would do EVP sessions, and a lot of times the answer would show up on the recorder before I even finished asking the question. That explains it. Plus, science is now going down a path called the survival theory, which basically says that consciousness would survive in this exact manner.
Right. Right. To get that answer through any physics of sound would have to be superluminal, faster than speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
And that again is where we're having an understanding of what we believe the substrate for everything happening being consciousness, because it allows for, if we're each fractal parts of one universal consciousness, then that answer does not have to traverse any distance like mechanical sound would. It's already there.
I know a little something about that.
Yeah, I was going to say, through application, more and more is being discovered with regards to that. It is, although we've used it more in layman terms, speed of thought. The speed of thought, some of this communication is coming through. And sometimes the speed faster than we can get it out of our mouth, the answers are coming through. So that's astounding to us.
Well, part of a longer story is with Cody and Satori using their method, a woman who died and was buried in Colorado that I was reading about on my phone and never verbalized any of it, suddenly pops in and says, Ken's thinking about me. And I was gobsmacked, but it opened my eyes to those possibilities, at least on 3 occasions where I never opened my mouth in terms of where I wanted to go next on an investigation.
Mm-hmm.
And on at least 2 other occasions is Ken thinking about me, and then would spell out exactly the person I was thinking about. So again, I don't know if it's as simple as I'm putting that out, or they read minds, or whether it's telekinetic or whatever. I like to think it's more telekinetic, where we know that a fully formed thought becomes something physical and goes into the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had it once described to me that way, which is kind of a way that legitimate psychics can pick these things off the grocery shelf,
Right. So they've done studies on that. So as far as consciousness goes, it doesn't ever become physical. But if we're connected to the same universal consciousness, then it is part of something that we are all fractally connected to. We're dissociated from each other in it, which is why we can't read each other's minds, which is why I don't know what's happening in the galaxy of Andromeda right now, because I'm dissociated and I have my own inner phenomenal conscious life. But to what you were speaking about, psychic mediums were studied under fMRI and EEG, and they had a control group that were people pretending to themselves and for the study to be psychics. And what they found was that the people who were genuine psychics, when they were processing and culling high complex thought information, they had a reduction in the activity in their brain that is responsible for complex thought. The people who were pretending to be mediums had extra excitations and activity in those same parts of the brain, which means there is, from a second person perspective, something it is that it looks like to actually be a medium. And we think that their dissociation, their dissociative boundary, which is what our physical body is more permeable. So they're able to pick up on more. If you think about this in a day-to-day kind of a setting, when you go outside during the daytime, the stars you see in the night sky are still there. You don't experience those. Why? Because your sensory input is obfuscating those things. You're getting lights and sounds and different things that are overpowering, and that's where your input is coming from. It doesn't mean that those things aren't there. You're just not at the time experiencing those. So the mediums are more permeable. When people do psychedelic trips, when they do the choking game and they try to cut oxygen off, what they're doing is they're trying to take down the dissociative barrier, and they're more permeable or more porous to consciousness as a whole. And then they're able to tap in and access more of that. And it doesn't have any necessary explanations, like you were saying, Ken, for having to travel distance or to read minds. It's just part of the consciousness that we are all derived from, all fractal parts of.
And the hope and possibilities of further achievement in this field and in science in general is every one of those capabilities in those individuals are electrical impulses.
Well, the electrical impulses are the extrinsic appearance of it. That's a mistake that we make with science and the paranormal a lot of times, is we take the observation of something to be the thing itself. We take the description to be the thing described, right? Combustion is in the appearance of fire. Fire is not combustion. It's the extrinsic second person appearance of it. Lightning is not an atmospheric disturbance. It's the extrinsic appearance of the disturbance from a second person perspective. But we relate cause to effect when sometimes it's not causal, it just correlates, right? You could always correlate when you see a fire, there's a fire truck and there's firemen, but that not is to say that the firemen and the truck are responsible for the fire, because you can correlate those two things every time or most times. So that's the difference. When people say they measure brain activity, that's the appearance of it. You can't measure experiential states. And this is the problem with physicalism as a metaphysics, as an explanation for reality versus what we were saying, that reality being mental. Because everything we know in life, directly or indirectly through acquaintance, is by experience. Everything.
And
so, right. So if everything we know is by experience, you can't measure experiential states. What is the weight of my love? What are the length of my thoughts? Science can't quantify those things. Those are qualia. Those are qualitative experiences. They are separate from quantities. They're not measurable. But we know they exist because that is all we know is through experience. So when we get those kinds of readings, that's the appearance of that emotion on a device that's giving you the extrinsic appearance, but it's not, you're not seeing love itself.
So what then what is the underlying achievement to it, such as with psychics, that they are receiving messages in the collective consciousness stand, and those are firing off words or translating within their brain? If that's the secondary effect, then the primary effect is what? And is that what we're still trying to discover, or do you know?
Well,
go ahead, Tony.
No, go ahead. The terminology of brain is where the confusion begins to come in. Mm-hmm. Materialistic science is going to say that consciousness is created in the brain. And when the brain dies and the body dies, consciousness dies. Well, if that was the case, then no one would be able to answer the questions that we ask. So consciousness has to exist beyond physical death. So when you're talking about answers coming and going, if, like Ron said, if our individual consciousness in the human body is part of the universal conscious, a fractal part of it, then that exchange of information back and forth is a normal existence, because you're part of it. Right. What you're thinking now is going to go back to universal consciousness. And can universal consciousness then send thoughts and information back to an individual consciousness in the human state? Yeah, it can.
Yeah, there's something in philosophy that's called the hard problem of consciousness, which says that there is no hypothesis or theory in which, even in principle, we can deduce the qualities of experience from abstract matter. So the problem with that is that when you say that the brain creates consciousness, the brain is matter. But matter out there, according to materialism, says that there is no experiential states. The taste of a strawberry, the smell of chocolate, those things don't exist out there. The physical world is exhaustively explained in quantities. So if there's no qualitative states or experiential states out there in the physical 3D world, then you can't have abstract matter in here creating consciousness as well.
Because of the same materials. Yeah.
Right. It's experiential states. So that's the hard problem of consciousness. And neurosciences have been tangling with that for quite a number of years. And it's not a problem to be solved. It's a problem that suggests that your metaphysics or your ontology for reality needs a rethinking.
Well, it's to me, it's still a problem to be solved in the sense of what we are trying to achieve, what you are trying to achieve with the ITC, but understanding, based upon what you said right there, the way that I interpreted it is that it is our creation of our soul that is receiving these messages. It's not the actual brain that's receiving the messages. It's not firing off particular synopsis in the brain. It's not sending a message to the part that we're not normally utilizing in our 5%, 10% of our brain. So it's the energy of our essence that is getting these messages from the collective consciousness. Am I interpreting that right?
Yeah, almost. Go ahead, Tony.
Well, the problem with language itself is that it makes us identify things as proper nouns rather than a behavior that's occurring. Like if I say this is a fist, no one's going to deny that's a fist. Where'd it go? Nowhere, because it was never a thing. It was a behavior. It's a behavior of my hand. The fist is not a thing. It's gone. Right, so right. In explaining what you're now saying is that the information is going to your consciousness, which is then interpreted by your brain. I think you used the word consciousness. I don't remember. But that is how we see it. That consciousness, yours, Ken's, Ron's, mine, are all part of the universal. And that flow of information back and forth can occur. Someone who's psychic, maybe even more so, because they're more porously open to receive it. The brain only takes those messages and converts it into our 3D of perception, like an instrument panel on an airplane to fly the plane. It's just the way we perceive the world around us so that we understand it and we don't become an entropic soup. Meaning, if you were looking at your computer, instead of clicking on a folder, which then took you to some video files and you clicked on your video file, if you were trying to process all the 0 and 1s of data that made up those folders and those video files, you wouldn't be able to function. Life has to be put in an arena that we can activate and reactivate if necessary to what's around us. And it's limited.
Yeah, it's an encoding. It's an encoding. We know we have limited sensory perception for sight, for sound. We know that. To go with the metaphor, like Tony said, we have a dashboard, and our sensory input measures the world around us. We get the salient points so we can go through life and not get run over by a truck. Basically, that's what it does. There's parts of the audio and video spectrum that we know we don't see or have access to, but we know that they exist. So we get what we need to survive, but the difference is that the pilot doesn't make the mistake that we do. He doesn't ever mistake the dashboard to be the sky.
Right.
He knows that that's giving him representative, valuable information of what's out there, but it's not what's out there in and of itself. So the messages and what you were talking about, they are working through us. Our brain has a purpose for processing and working through the data, the translation, but it's not the creator of consciousness. It is through which nature works, but it's not created there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well,
Can you get those clips? Okay.
I had a question about consciousness, but I still want to get to these clips. We'll come back to it. No, it's not my question. It's actually from our chat group. But speaking of consciousness, this may be kind of right up your alley here. And this is one of these that really stuck out to me. So I'm anxious to play it for everybody. And, you out there, I think it's pretty remarkable. Okay, the repetition obviously stands out, but the clarity and more importantly, I think the dissemination of a message is equally remarkable to me. So I'd like you guys to talk about that clip a little bit. And, you know, if you have questions about it, we're going to do our best to get them out there to you. But gentlemen,
Yeah, no.
What did we just hear?
Appreciate the kind words. So I looped it. I repeated the whole message was, "I am somebody consciousness. Look at me. I am Tony's friend." And then I repeated it because consciousness was one of the clearest things I've ever heard come through. Not to mention that it named our partner, Tony. Also quite clear, and not the first or only time that Tony or Rathman has come through. Rathman comes through more than anything I probably ever heard. So that's what was remarkable to me, was everything you pointed out. It was extremely clear. Our goal, to refer back to an earlier question, is to have Staticom operate at that level all the time. We get some that are remarkably clear like that, and other times it's not as discernible, and we're doing everything in our power to try to get it so it's consistently at that level. When it's at that level, we will have reached a milestone, I think, but we don't think we're there yet, and we're continually trying to develop it so it can be there. But that was recorded right here during a regular Staticom session, and I was, again, like you, I was astounded at the clarity of the word consciousness.
Remarkable. So real quickly, I know with this you continue to push forward and you're kind of living in the moment. You know, how can we, you know, I don't know if you're thinking on a macro level at this point, but do you ever give yourself permission to think of what this means for the future of ITC communication? Or are you just sort of putting that aside for now and just seeing where this road is going to lead you?
You know, those questions come in and out of our minds probably multiple times a day. I mean, when you're talking about the fact that that clip you just played, that speaking voice identified themselves as consciousness. The one thing we're saying exceeds beyond death. That's how they identified themselves. So, you know, you're talking about implications of the way to be able to communicate. I mean, Thomas Edison always said he wanted to create a phone to the dead. Well, this is pretty good progress in that direction. But then you take a look at materialistic science that says, hey, when the body dies, the brain dies, consciousness dies. Well, that's going to open up doors in that aspect. You're opening up doors from a scientific level on how is this communication occurring and at what rate? How does it get into the closed system, into the white noise, and elevated to, I mean, we talk about stochastic resonance, but is there a communication factor out there then that's faster than fiber optics? You know, if there is, this is it. So to talk about the limitations or the boundaries of it, we don't know. What doors could be opened from it? We don't know that either yet.
No.
Yeah, quick question from Corey. What does ITC stand for? She came in late.
Instrumental transcommunication. The definition of it is being to communicate with a disembodied spirit through the means of a third-party technical or electronic device.
Okay. So we've covered that. I want to get to more of these because, as I said in the teaser to you guys coming on, I had the good fortune of listening to these today, and there was absolutely nothing on my end that needs to be done. I didn't have to amplify anything for the benefit of our audience. Sometimes we have to do that with EVP and so forth. One quick question for you. By definition, do you define these as EVP? Or is this something a little different?
That's a great question. I'll hand it to Tony, but I mean, categorically, you could call it that because at the time Direct Radio Voice started, everything that was recorded audibly that was phenomenal was considered EVP. We classify it differently, and I'll let Tony explain why, because of the birthing of the idea of ITC was for a reason.
Yeah. So Ron's absolutely correct. Originally, any voice, whether it be from a recorder, a spirit box, or any other electronic device, was classified as electronic voice phenomena up until the early 1960s when Ernst Sinkowski came back and said, we need a different name for when we're using DRV or a spirit box. We're going to call that ITC, or instrumental trance communications. So literally, is an EVP still a form of ITC? Yes, it is, because all ITC uses a third-party electronic device. So really the only definition is in what ITC was set up to do. When you do an EVP session, it's record and review, meaning you'll ask question after question after question. Rarely do you hear it with your own ears. Then you have to go back and review it. ITC is made to be true, real-time, two-way communication, meaning I can ask a question, get an answer, and keep that conversation going. So to answer that question, it falls on both sides, but it's really a form of instrumental trance communication out of a two-way methodology.
Right. And one more quick question. Is there an amount of time that you limit these sessions to for any reason, or will these just go on indeterminately? Like a lot of times we're doing EVP work, it's just, okay, 20 minutes in, let's take a little break here, review what we have. Do you put any kind of guardrails on parameters as to the amount or the length of a particular session for any reason?
I know when we do a public event, for example, we'll do anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. And then just purely because people need to pee and stretch their legs, we'll take a break and then we'll reconvene. Generally, the longer it goes on and the later groups or sessions seem to get better and better. But we'll do that when we record the files. I'll record them in 15-minute increments so that when I'm reviewing stuff later for stuff that I didn't hear in real time, it's more digestible to go through them. Yeah. And if I hear something at like 4.5 minutes, I will stop and start a new file so that when I want to look for it, I know where it is because I stopped something shy of 15 minutes. So those kind of guardrails for the purposes of going back over it. But we've done this at some locations when we went for a couple hours and people would sit there, take a break and come back. And it's literally like an open line. It'll just be dead silent until a voice comes out. And it's something that's fascinating. We could sit and do it for a long time.
Yeah. So basically you're serving at the pleasure of whoever decides that, yeah, I want to hang out and talk to you guys for a couple of hours here. You know, it's like, by all means, we're not going to chase you away.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. This next one it kind of gets cut off. My Haunted Manor. It's about 47 seconds long. And again, I'm just going to play this and let you guys talk about this, but awesome stuff. Here we go.
Thank you.
They started digging. What would they find?
Person.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, ask the person's name.
Is it a male or a female person? Male or female? Woman.
Woman.
Oh, woman.
That's a great clip.
That's a great clip. I am curious to hear. I'm reading along and chat right now. I'm curious as to what you people think about hearing this, but yeah. So why don't you guys tell us a little bit about what situation that you find yourself in there?
That was the Samuel Miller Mansion in Columbia, PA. We were honored to be invited by Daryl Marston, Jeff, and Trey Bader, who were doing the My Haunted USA, part of the My Haunted Project, affiliated also with the group in the UK doing My Haunted Hotel, headed by Danny Moss. And we went there, and they have got a lot of mediums and different information through different methods, suggesting that some female was treated poorly, let's say, abused, killed, buried, etc. So they were trying to see if they can get that through other methods. And when we brought Staticom down to the basement and we asked the questions about that, that was what they said. And it was fascinating. I pointed at a sign that said "Do not enter," and I said, "What does the sign say?" On another clip, and the voice said, "The sign says not to enter." So it interpreted the message back, but didn't repeat the same words that I used. It's a very historically significant location with regards to the battle in Gettysburg, and it was one of the most interactive Staticom sessions we've had. 2 weeks later, they had us come back when Dustin Parry was there. That episode just dropped on YouTube, I think, today. It's a really, really good location, worth checking out if people want to head over to Columbia, PA. But that was essentially it. It was the basement in this very historical place.
Okay. I suppose my question is, what led up to the idea of the person? Obviously, you was looking for somebody specifically.
Yeah, they've gotten information from different mediums and then other methods they've done, EVP, that suggested that they're trying to find historical records to corroborate. Okay. But supposedly there was a female who was abused and murdered and is buried near the furnace under the ground there. Prior to that clip, like a couple seconds before that in the longer version, they had also asked if there was anybody down there where they were, and the word furnace came out. And then those questions were what followed. So it was about them fact gathering for what they think might be historically significant to that spot.
Yeah, I would think that if you have someone who's open-minded, this is a boon to mediumship in a lot of ways for impressions, or even a paranormal investigator. It's just kind of like, okay, I have this voice, but I would like to get some emotional content or something that we can't read in a book or a document. Mm-hmm. Because I can give you dates and I can give you names and and I don't know how much of that you guys get into for corroboration, but it seems more that, okay, we have all that, now I want to talk to the person.
Yeah, we work with mediums a lot, and we've had information that they've gotten that they've culled through their mediumship that is completely corroborated with what we've gotten or fit in lockstep with the information that we've gotten. There's a gentleman named Rich Michello who's a spirit artist, and we'll do events with him, and he'll sketch the essence of what he sees. And then we'll get information through Staticom that will say, maybe a cause of death, vocation, a favorite thing they like to do. And then he'll have written that down on his sketch already. And then he'll show it to the audience, and they'll identify that someone in their family. They'll pull out their phone and show you the picture that looks very much like what he sketched. And then the information that we got also connected to that same person, it was completely relevant. To me, mediumship does not supplant the other. I think they absolutely work in tandem. They inform each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only time they don't is if the person claiming to have the mediumship abilities but doesn't. Because we've literally had Staticom turn around and say they have no abilities.
Yeah, that's the worst. You just kind of back out of the room real slowly. But that's what I mean. If someone with true ability would, sure, absolutely, I welcome this 1,000%, knowing that mediums aren't right 100% of the time, but sure. Welcome it. We got the 5-minute warning here from Bill, so I want to get through these last clips here. This one is entitled "No Cops." It's something about like my teenage years, I guess. No cops. So
what's your favorite part of this house? What room?
All right, so real quick, quick. This was all. What was that?
I said, holy crap. That's like, I mean, that's awesome.
Well, the 6 of us were this was the Montgomery House in North Carolina, and the entire EVPE team was there to investigate. This house was on 5,000 acres when it was built, and it was built in 1820. Mm-hmm. So what you heard Lourdes ask was, what's your favorite part of the house? What room? But what the answer that came through, and it took us a minute to realize they did answer the question. He answered it with timing and accuracy. They were on 5,000 acres. Town was a half a day's horse ride away, if not longer. Mm-hmm. And there would be no cops. House had no cops. House had safety. Children could play. In the 1820s, that's super important. So that answer absolutely answered the question we asked.
All right.
Well, they gave you an insight into their time. This is how it works.
Their time, and they gave an answer that we weren't even thinking.
We got 60 seconds, Ken, if you want to get that last clip in.
Okay, sure. 300.
Oh, yeah.
I listened to this one. Here you go. You listen to it.
How many spirits are with us right now?
300.
300? Did you say 300?
The funniest thing about that was, she passed go, which is an interesting way of saying that. Yeah, she's no longer with us.
Right. Yeah. And the other great thing about it was I wasn't expecting the answer of 300, and then when I questioned it, then I got sarcasm. Not only intelligence, timing, and relevance, but sarcasm. What is that? The wrong answer? You asked me how many were here. I answered you. You questioned my answer, and then so what is that? The wrong answer? So. Yeah, that's just it's an incredible clip.
Gentlemen, tell everybody about your show, where they can catch you, and as far as the upcoming presentations and evidence that you guys have, where they can follow you.
Well, the easiest way is on YouTube. If you just type in Staticom, we have an entire page that will show clip after clip after clip. We have GonyakParanormal.com website. We have EntityVoices.com website. We can be found on Facebook underneath the Staticom Project. And there's a ton of other avenues. Those are the big ones and easiest to get in contact with us.
And let's not also forget, Ron is a published author many times over.
Yes, sir.
That's where you can find his books, Amazon.com stores.
I appreciate
you can find sorry, Ron, go ahead.
The 5th one drops on Tuesday. It's called Afterlife Contact, and it's coming out, I believe, Tuesday the 17th. Afterlife Contact, a new perspective, and it has a lot to do with the idealism and philosophy of mind and consciousness that we explained. So that and the other 4 are available on Amazon. Thank you very much, both of you, for having us. You made us dig deep. You showed love and support, and you gave us a platform to share what we do. We respect what you do, and the opportunity to us was very much appreciated. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
thank you.
When we sign off, no, don't go anywhere. Hang with us off air.
Yeah, yeah. Bill's sweating in the background right now. He's got to get to his next show. Thank you guys all for joining us. Our Patreon members, we'll see you tomorrow night in Town Hall. Hopefully I won't be so wiped out. But thank you guys for watching. This is Dead or Live on the Dead or Full Spectrum channel. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella bad. After her there ain't no coming back. Wanna take a run at that? I think she's feeling me. Turn it up a few degrees. My imagination